Well, hello and welcome to this watch review. I'm going to review this watch today, which is a March LA.B watch. Really nice watch. I bought it about a year ago. So let's dive into it. The first thing I do, I've developed sort of a little bit of a tool. It's a very small little tool to help me when I'm reviewing a watch for myself. And that's this square I'm having here. The first thing I'm doing is I look at the brand, and it's not because brand is an important thing. As you can see from the whole square here, this is a very small piece of the total puzzle, but I always start out with a brand. I mean, if I see a watch, is it a Rolex, is it an Omega, is it a Breitling? Those give a sort of a different dimensions. If it's a Breitling, it's a different dimension than if it's a totally new Kickstarter brand. So, and in this case, I haven't heard about March LA.B before, neither have you. And if you have, good for you. I mean, that you're one of the very few people who have. So, it's actually a very unknown brand. I have seen a few reviews in a blog to watch and Worn and Wound back in 2012 or so, many years ago, but other than that it's been very quiet about this kind of thing, so it was totally new for me. You can see their website here. They've got a story. It's partly French, and so it's from Biarritz in France and from Los Angeles in California, and a strange combination, but it works. It's basically a French watch, and that's not something I'm used to. But I totally liked the watch and bought it, even though I didn't have any clue about the brand or the watches. So they don't. If you look at the brand, they don't get any points from being an Omega or being anything. But in my book, they get a little plus point because I really like new companies starting out with a mission, and they really want to do something and make some watches that are, rather unique. So they're facing tough competition, so I really like that. And they've made a ton of good watches, all very different designs. And this is not the only, this watch here is not the only one they've been doing. So and they make an exceptional quality. So it's really nice to see. So a little bit of a plus here, but the brand is basically totally unknown. So the second piece of the puzzle here is much bigger, and here we're diving into the size. And size didn't used to matter to me at all. I used to wear 44, 45 millimeters Breitlings and so on, heavy, thick watches, and that was how I started out. But over the years, eventually you find out what is right for you. In my case, I used more and more vintage watches, smaller and smaller sizes, and really appreciated smaller sizes. So 36 to 40 is my game, roughly. So I always, after the brand, I always start out with size, because I cannot buy a watch that's too big. And that's my pet peeve is always that watches are too big nowadays. So, but they're starting to go smaller. It's really been fun for me to see how this year's. This is a 36 millimeter, and it's really courageous from a new brand, relatively new brand, coming out with something small like this when everyone else is doing 42s and so on. But seeing brands coming out, even Breitlings and Panerais coming out with 38 millimeters, it's a totally new game. Oris is coming out, and Breitling and Panerais, and so that's really refreshing to see. So my pet peeve is that the size is too big. In this case, this size is probably 36, so it's probably maybe even a little bit too small for a lot of people. So let's have a measurement here. So on the website it says 36 millimeters, and I don't know why. I mean, I was brought up in a industry where precision is the key. and I never find that their measurements fit. So it's not 36, it's 35.5. That's actually a little bit small. For me, it's pushing the boundaries of what I'm comfortable with. So that's not a good thing in my book. 36, 37, I like really 38, but 36 is my lowest level I can participate in. So it's a little bit small with the dimensions here. What's saving the day, however, is that they have here a 20 millimeter logbook. That saves the day, because if they have chosen an 18 millimeter, that usually makes the watch seem smaller. So 20 millimeters is a very good classical size. Another thing that sort of helps the day is it's 43, relatively modest size, but it wears quite big with this kind of lock to lock. And then we've got 13.4, which is for this small kind of size here, which is almost vintage size, it's rather thick. But much of this is because of, if I just position this right, look at that domed sapphire. So this is AR coated sapphire. It's really thick and it's really protruding off the case. I really like that. Very, very nice. So that, of course, that adds some thickness to it, and so it's a good size here. But if I take this 35.5 millimeter and compare it with another one that's also 35.5, it's a Stover, and it's actually the same dimensions here. Wow, 36.3. Yeah, so it's actually a little bit bigger, but it seems much more bigger because it has the bezel on a Stover as a Flieger here. They're notorious for wearing bigger because there's almost no bezel, so they always seem bigger, and you can see it looks much more bigger because the bezel over here sort of detracts from the volume. So however, on the Stover, you've got an 18 millimeter here, and well, I like a 20 millimeters much better. So there's pluses and minuses on all of them. So that's a classical size would be if I take a Rolex, because that's 36. Actually, this one is closer in diameter, 35.6. So they are the exact same size in width. But to my eye, at least, I mean, that's a little bit subjective. This one, the Rolex, seems a little bit bigger. So I can't really tell why. Also, the lock to lock is the same. So, and of course, the thickness is smaller. But anyway, this is probably more or less at the boundary of what I'm capable of wearing, but I do enjoyed it. The thing is, they do have other watches. If you want to have a look, they have the same watch here with a panda dial. They have bigger watches. This is a 38 millimeter, which is better, or more appropriate sized, and they've got 39 millimeters. So they got a different range of different products, and different colors and combinations, and so it's possible to find something without having this exact one here. So, but let me put it on the wrist, and before I do that, a quick wristwatch check. I'm wearing a Bulova Acroton from the 70s, very cool vintage watch. So if I put this on my wrist here just for a second, what you can see is it is a little bit, actually is very nice vintage watch size. A little bit to the small side, so you can go for 38 if you want, but it's really a nice watch here. And another thing that helps it is the design, but I'll get into that. So now you've got an idea about the size. So size is a really important matter, and the reason why I take size as number 2 is I have bought watches that are too small, I've bought watches that are too big, and I simply don't wear them. And if I wear them, it's very seldom, and I put it in a drawer and leave it there for a long time. So it's a waste of time. I find it's like buying shoes. If you find a wonderful shoe in the shop and say, wow, that's a great shoe, but it's 2 sizes too big, what do? You don't buy them. You ask the shop, do you have it in my size, And if they say no, well, then you're saying, sorry, I'm not going to buy a shoe that's 2 sizes too big or 2 sizes too small. So I have the same with watches. It has to fit, and 36 to 40 is my range. So now we'll get to the one of the biggest puzzles here in the piece, and that's the design, and that's huge. This is the reason why we're buying watches, why I'm buying watches at least, and that's the design. This design is really, I really like that. They've done something quite unique here. But before I go into that, this is a truly unique piece. This is not an homage to anything, but all watches are related in some way and fashion. The first thing I'm thinking of when I see a watch like this is probably maybe something like the Rolex Datejust, or maybe the Air King. It's no way an homage or anything, but we're in that sort of dimension, both size-wise and design-wise. The only thing, really is the bezel here, and the bezel here is more or less the same, but other than that, they're totally different watches. So basically it's not a fair comparison, but that's the design area we're in. The case is something quite unique, and let me get some smudges out of the way here. One of March LA.B's design philosophies is they are really attracted to muscle cars, American muscle cars, Mustang and so on. So they have done a really aggressive kind of case shape here, They have some roundness to it, but most of it is really square. Look at these lugs here, square lugs, sharp bevels on the inside of the lugs. It's really a very aggressive kind of case. So a Rolex like this one here, the lugs are more curved and it's more round, and so this is much more square and aggressive and muscle car like, and I really like that. It gives, if it was too soft and a 36mm, it ends up being a little bit too feminine. But here with an aggressive muscle car, that adds up. So it makes it a man's watch by that standard. And the case finishing with the polishing and the brushed here on the top, and then the mirror finished on the inside here. A lot of good designs here, and here on the ends are also cut and masculine. That's brushed ends. So the case design is really, really nice, masculine and aggressive. So let's go to the dial. That's why we're buying the watch. They have, if I try to zoom in here, let me try. You can see it has brushing. It's a little bit hard to catch here in the, maybe if I angle it like this. The case is, the dial is brushed from the top to the bottom. And it's a totally wonderful thing. Let me try to do a comparison with the watch I have been thinking about buying. It's by no means a fair comparison, but what is unique about a watch I was looking at was this one, the Omega Railmaster, the new one from Basel 17. And one of the new things that it is, the surface is brushed from the top to the bottom. Really nice feature. I really like that watch. I've been sort of humming yes or no whether to buy it or not. I really think it's a great watch. Of course, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I really like it. The thing about it is the brushed is totally new for me. I've never seen a brushed surface before, but this one has it already, and this one had it 1 year before the Omega Railmaster was launched. So they're not doing any homage. They're the first movers here, and it's got this lovely golden. It's like champagne and gold and metal all fused into one. So it's not gold, because gold is a little bit too blingy, but the brushed surface makes it's like a metal gold champagne thing. So that's really, really nice. But it's also nice, this surface here. But from this point on, these two watches diverge quite a lot, because what you can see is I am a texture guy. I really like texture and three-dimensional things. Look at the hour markings here, applied indices, which is something I really like, and the logo is applied. If you look at the Omega, the hour markers are painted on. That's a turn off for me. Even the Omega logo is not applied, it's simply just painted on. It makes the surface much more flat. So that's a big turn off for me. I mean, yes, painted is okay, but I really like applied. Another thing here, if you look at this, one of my I really like crosshairs, and you can see this has a crosshairs here. And what you can see is, if you look at it carefully, you can see it's a groove. It's not painted on, it's a groove into the surface, down into them, digging it out of the ground into the surface, which is really nice. So now we've got 3 levels. The groove into the material, we got the material itself, the dial itself, and then we got the applied indices on top. So we do have a lot of depth in this watch here. Whereas my really coveted Omega, this crosshair is something I really like, but again, it's printed. So again, it's boring, it's one-dimensional, printed text, printed crosshairs, printed hour markers, printed logo. Everything is one flat surface. The only thing standing out is the minute and hour hands and seconds hands. So it makes the watch much more one-dimensional, and they certainly here nailed it with different kinds of textures here, and it's a much more interesting dial to look at. So it's not to compare those two watches, but the brushing makes it relevant to compare them, and the 3D effect here is simply nice. Another thing they always have the crown here at 4 o'clock. I really like that on a diver watch, and the watches that I buy that are a little bit bigger, 40 and a little bit above that, because it makes it much more easy to wear. You don't need here on a small watch like this, 36, 38, you don't need a crown down here. But it doesn't matter. For me, it's fine. It's one of their key characteristics. They always do that. That's fine. So it's not for practical purposes. It's more for design. But look at the knurling on this. Really intricate, a really nice design. I don't know what to compare it with, but it's certainly got a life of its own here on the side. They're not trying to hide it. They're actually trying to accentuate it, and it's got a very nice logo here. So this should be facing this way here. So it's a nice logo, nice applied, nice engraved, really, really nice here. Another thing they have on design-wise is here on the back. They got a, of course, it's a see-through, which is fine. and they got a green color. Also on the straps, normally, not on this is my strap, but on the back they have a green backing on the strap because they have this sort of thing. It's called March LA.B. March meaning the month of March. So that's their company thing, and they really like March month and green. So they do green accents like this one. Also, a little funny thing, when you turn the calendar to the 3rd, symbolizing March, when it turns to 3, the number 3 is green, so it's glowing green instead of white like you see here on 22. So just a lot of nice details. So they're really paying attention to details, and I really like that. That's something that's very evident with this watch. They're paying attention to details and doing a lot of really high-end things compared to other watches. So I really appreciate that. So what else? My main feature here is the 3D and texture effect. The hands are really nice too, the minute and hour hands, and but this is like classical dress watch. I don't know how to describe the hands, but they're more for a dress watch, which it is. It is a dress watch, and incidentally, that's why I have this guy standing here. I always try to represent the watch I'm in. So this guy is a watch guy. A dress watch guy. The car is more for fun because what they're trying to emulate is like muscle cars, and so of course it's by no means a chronograph or racing watch, but they're trying to give a sort of a muscle car flair to the watch. But it is a dress watch, and the hands follow that, and the second hands is very substantial and really nice. So I really like the design of all of this. The glass is sapphire, so it's, and it should be at this cost. So it's sapphire, and as I mentioned before, it's really high, really domed. I really like that effect. It gives it a wrist presence, even though it's 35.5 is small. It gives it a big wrist presence when you have this watch on. So I really like that. So all in all, I would say that this kind of watch here, this design here, is taking, the way I would put it is, we're going back into the 50s and looking at a Datejust, and then bringing the design forward into this millennia and giving a much more squared and aggressive look, and doing texturing with the brushing, and keeping this a really young and fresh look. So if you're not into old vintage watches, I am. I like Rolex, just like the one I showed you before. I really like vintage watches, but if you are into new watches, this is a way to get into a new and fresh take on this. So it's really a nice watch, and the design is really coherent, and that's what I like. So that was the dial. The strap, I didn't. I put one of my own straps on. I'll show you some different strap options they have, but let's go to the next one here. This one, price. Of course, we need to know the price. I don't know if you can see. It seems like a little bit dark here. It's quite expensive. This is one of the drawbacks. There's two drawbacks with this watch. It's 1,145 euros, and that is with a very, very nice strap that I didn't buy. I should have. This is like a buffalo grained leather. I don't know what it is. It's really, really nice. If you take it with a metal bracelet, I'm a leather guy, but if you're into bracelets, also 1145. Or you can go with a more, which is kind of a nice leather band, but more normal leather band. It's $9.95. So I cheapened out and I said I'll buy the €9.95 and apply one of my own straps on it, because I didn't want the black one. But in hindsight, I should have forked out the extra money, which is actually €150 extra, on top of already getting a bracelet, already getting a leather band. You're forking out €150 extra, and you don't get another band. You just get the other band here replaced with this band. So it's a lot of money for a leather band, but I've seen it live, and I regret now not buying it. It's a really, really nice band. I just don't use the color black that often, so that's why I switched it in for one of my own, a grey one, and that's fine too. So price is one of the terms. €1,100 is a lot of money for a new brand, totally unknown brand, and I think it's a little bit too much. But with this kind of design characteristics, with this kind of quality, 1,100 is absolutely pocket money. It's nothing. With this kind of design, they really deserve that kind of price. So, it's a toss-up. Do you think it's too big, too much money, or too little? I don't know. Certainly, the quality warrants that. And that brings me to another thing, because we are not done with the puzzle yet. Of course, there's a corner piece up here saying what movement is it. It depends on what kind of movement we are looking at. And the movement we're seeing here is an automatic. It's a Miyota 9015, which is that they're doing this to keep cost a little bit down. Miyota 9015 is a truly very, very good, reliable workhorse of a movement. I'm not an expert like this, but many people say Miyota 9015 is more or less like the ETA 2824. It's got a 42-hour power reserve. It's really nice and really reliable, and people really like it. It's very accurate. So it's roughly the same as an ETA 2824 that we all know. So it's a pretty high-end brand, but it's not Swiss made. So of course that has a relevance when you're looking at the price of 1,100. So it's not an ETA, it's not an in-house, but what they have chosen is something that is truly working and truly great. But then they have used the money on the brushing, the texture, the case design. They have used the money on all the things that's visible, and then reduced the cost a little bit with the Miyota. But I think it's a fair bargain. In my world, it's a really fair bargain. I wouldn't pay 2,000 euros. That would be too much. But I think this is sort of stretching it. But that, for me, it's great. That's really fine. So, what is left is we've got a piece here. Complications. What do we have in terms of complications? Basically none. The only complication we have is the date, the 22nd here. Well, if it was a true dress piece, it wouldn't have a date. Personally, I prefer without date, but it's nicely executed here with a framed window, and even the third of every month you get that small reminder, because it's a green number, so you get a reminder of their design philosophy. For me it's fine, but that's the only complication there is, so not a lot to tell. But on the dress piece I prefer without date. So the overall thing, the last piece here is the X factor. What is the X factor? And by X factor I mean you can have nice specification in all of these puzzles here, and they can either fit, work together, or they can work against each other. In this case, I really think that the things are fused together to create something that has its own spirit. It's from a small watch, 36mm or 35.5, which is too small. So the size is 1mm too small, and it's a little bit too expensive. Those are the two drawdowns. But disregarding those two things, it's a small watch with a kicking full of spunk and angular case and muscle car theme, with an intricate dial and texture and 3D, and it is really a nice watch. So I am really digging it, and I give lots of thumbs up for a company who dares to go into battle with Omegas and Breitlings and so on, and create something that is new for this millennia. And I thought here at the end I would just try to show you they have a small promotional video. I mean, I'm not trying to promote them. I'm certainly giving you all the drawbacks and so on. So the video is just capturing some fun, California vibe. So I really like that video as well. So I just wanted to show you that briefly here. So that was it. Thank you for today, and see you next time. Bye.